feel like I know what I'm doing now after doing this. If we had a little bit more say in what we could do, it would have turned out differently. Yeah, it was definitely a learning experience for sure. And I'd love to do something similar in the future. I think now, so that I've kind of had this experience, I'm like, yeah, I could do this. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Second Year Run podcast. I'm your host, Wyatt Mason, and today, this is the final episode of the podcast. Well, this is a note for now. I don't know. I doubt we'll be coming back for anything in the future, as we've all graduated from the program at this point when I'm recording this. This is also the most recent recording of the episodes that have come out lately. Like, I'm recording it now, and then I'm going to be editing it right away for quick upload speed. But yeah, we did our practicum, we did our capstone, as we talked about last time, did our summer break, and now it's the start of a new school year, technically. When I'm recording this is like pretty much the anniversary date of when this podcast started, at least the first couple of uploads. Because when we first came out, I wanted to do it right at the beginning of school, but it didn't work out. It just didn't have the time to do it. So we did the next week, and then I took a couple extra days to edit when I wanted to upload it on the Saturday. That was always the idea from the beginning, just record on Friday and then upload on Saturday, because that's a really quick turnaround time. At least I would think so. To kind of get everything done, especially in a busy school schedule where there's not a lot of time. And yeah, that was kind of the whole point of the podcast, really, too, was just to try and see if I could make something weekly, you know? And then that would kind of document our thoughts, and if people wanted to listen to our experiences, they'd be able to, you know? And even just kind of a way to, like, yeah, sort of, you know, remember the moment in a way. Because then we can look back, you know, sort of a year from now and see how life was then. Because a lot has changed. A lot has changed over the past year since I started this podcast. It's kind of crazy to think. You know, there's always just kind of constant news going on. And that's the thing, too, that upon editing these last couple of episodes, I realized was that I never wanted to make it too topical all the time, but I'm glad we brought up stuff as it came along, as a way to kind of, yeah, document it. Because sometimes I go back and I listen to some, you know, podcasts that are a little bit older now, and they talk about events that happened, and it's like, I remember them at the time, and it's interesting to hear people talk about it at the time and see what they thought, and see maybe how, you know, perception on stuff has changed. So yeah, I'm glad overall. I'm glad about this podcast. I'm glad I did it. I've always wanted to try and see if it was something I could do, because let's be honest, podcasts are like the most like easy thing to make. Like, I'm doing it right now in my bedroom. Like, before we would record it at school in one of the recording booths because we had that available, but now that I've graduated, it's not available. So I'm just doing this in my room right now, which is probably why it may sound different too. And yeah, also, I don't know what happened like in that last episode, because I was listening to the recording and I could hear, I thought my dad was watching a movie downstairs and I could hear like thumping, and I thought it was just the movie, and then I took my headphones off and he wasn't watching the movie anymore, and I realized it was from like the table. Like, I think one of the microphones, they were on these arms, and I think it kept on bending and moving, or something kept on hitting the table. I don't know what it was. It was long enough now. But yeah, I'm sorry about the audio on that last one, because it was really bothering me. I kept on hearing it, and I couldn't find a good way to fix it. I was trying to get rid of some of the bass, but I didn't want to make it sound too tinny, and then it just kind of, I don't know. Anyways, we kind of touched on the capstone project with Haley last time, so I could talk a little bit more about that, just as like, on the podcast before, I mentioned about wanting to do a live show, like eventually, like sometime in the future. And some of the faculty were kind of like, you know, they heard about it, and they thought, you know, something this kid wants to do, maybe give him a chance. But then after the winter break, I was approached specifically by one member, and they asked me if I wanted to, you know, kind of pitch and come up with an idea, and that I would pitch it first to him, and then he would go to the faculty and say that, hey, Wyatt came to me and pitched something, and then, you know, hopefully go from there. And that was, so that's even a good positive about doing this podcast, is by doing this and kind of, you know, putting those thoughts and messages out there, kind of did something that I really wanted to do for a long time. And yeah, I don't know. It was really interesting, though, going that route, because at one point they mentioned that they didn't want me to let them know that they approached me from the beginning they wanted to make it seem like I was really championing the idea, but like so normally with the capstone projects too is that like there really is only kind of like two options. Like you either kind of do like a dance like showcase with a bunch of dancers, you make a background, light it up, make it look pretty, or you do like a band showcase and two bands come on and they go and yeah, just perform basically. And they do a couple tracks and you have a little couple interviews. But that's something I guess like the students are kind of supposed to, create and pitch, but it is kind of standard. Like you're given these two groups and you just kind of have to make content, I'll say, for those groups. And it's all kind of similar to stuff we've done in the past with like sort of like the who are yous and like just kind of like general interviews, tech impacts, that kind of a thing. It's all stuff we've done before, and especially with all the live stuff that we've done in Studio One with the Science World or the robotics, if they've gotten a chance to do that, hopefully there'll be a chance to do some more SFU basketball games for the second years this year. It all kind of sort of relates and comes together into this capstone project. But there's not as much freedom, I'll say, as like what we had with this, what we call the Before We Go show, because it was the last show before we go. Especially because it was the last thing too before our practicums as well. Like that was kind of it for that sort of set and group who had worked on like the short films together, and we just been together, really close knit. A lot of us were friends in that group, especially. So it was really fun overall. I really enjoyed it for that, and having that somewhat of freedom. We kind of mentioned last episode too. That kind of sort of expecting things to work out a little bit differently than what we thought. But you don't get as much freedom, I'll say. You can kind of come up with like a look and a style and an idea, and especially lighting. They want you to go crazy with the lighting. When I was in a first year and I saw the second years doing their band performance, I thought it was really, really good. Like they had a lot of smoke effects and they did a lot of set work and they set up flats and did some artwork on them. And it was really interesting and unique. But they're still just kind of doing that sort of band showcase like previous years. There was also an example too they showed where they did somewhat of like a live showcase, but this is also during like COVID times, like as they're like people were graduating during COVID, so there wasn't as much like you couldn't have as many people in such a confined space like Studio One. Like Studio One's big, but still, yeah, that like it fills up fairly quickly, and yeah, I could see why they'd make adjustments for that. But it wasn't as, I'll say, polished as ours. And I'll say that too, for a bunch of students, I think we nailed it on the head. I was really happy with how that whole thing turned out from top to bottom. I just think it looked absolutely stellar and it was exactly like how I kind of pictured it in my head. Like, I don't know. I was very happy. Especially, we got this curtain. We didn't talk about this last time, but we got this curtain that we hung up from like sort of the curtain rails we have in the Studio One. And it was a city backdrop, and that's where we did sort of like a late night talk show set. There was a desk for me to sit behind. I had a little chair. There's some couches and a table and a couple of like, mason jars. And yeah, it looked really good. At first, I was a little worried because the backdrop that it is, it's more of almost like a stage play kind of like backdrop. Like, you know what I mean? Like you'd see it like in a community theater or something, and it's the backdrop they have for like their city scenes, and then they throw a curtain up to cover it. It was very much like that because it wasn't like if you think of like a Jimmy Fallon or like a David Letterman, where it's more of like the city like rooftops, like you're high up like in an office building. This was like ground level, like New York City street. So in one way it was kind of cool because like, yeah, I guess that's kind of a good way to kind of set us apart, right, from what we're trying to be. I don't know, maybe that's a bad way of looking at it too, but we are trying to be sort of, like quote unquote adult, growing up late night talk shows, but we are still kind of amateurish and, students. So while they're up there, kind of higher up, we're on the ground level. You know what I mean? We're on kind of on the bottom there. We're trying to make our way to the top. I don't know. I only kind of realized that like right now too is talking about it. So I don't know if it's any truth to that. Maybe, I don't know. Anyways, I really liked it. But the pitching process too, I think was really different because normally I would think with these capstone projects, people would only like try to pitch something during like, I'll say, the leading weeks into the capstone. Like you have 4 weeks of the capstone project. First 2 weeks to record all the pre-tape stuff that's getting like shown during the broadcast, and then 2 weeks to set up and rehearse for the broadcast itself. And then yeah, whatever kind of style and theme that people want to go with, it's kind of like sort of designed, maybe in a couple weeks beforehand, and then going right through those four weeks, they'll come up with a theme idea and a showcase idea. But because I knew that like the idea that I had in my mind was, I think, larger scale than what has been done previously, I wanted to get kind of a jump start on it. And I think that's why that faculty member approached me in January after the winter break, is to just even put the idea out there. And I think also just to see kind of what was going to happen with the short films as well, like just how sort of the dynamics of the groups and the people sort of working together, and who's going to play nicely with others. I think they wanted to see that as well, because originally I was hoping to be a producer on it. From the get-go, I wanted to be a producer primarily. Being a host was kind of secondary. I did feel like, someone else could have done it. We could have hired someone and paid him a little bit, just to come in and say some lines or whatever. I shouldn't say some lines, but that's kind of what the hosting was. It was just sort of those transitional stuff leading to the next topics. And then, that one kind of segment of making it like a interview show. And I think maybe they're worried about me, I'll say taking over, making it the Wyatt show, so to speak, which is fair. I completely understand that. And I'll say, too, it was never my intention. Like, I absolutely didn't want it to be just the Wyatt show, because I personally would have thought that would have been really lame. Like, this is supposed to be a capstone project. I want everybody, I want to make this a show for everybody. I just have an idea. I have an idea for a format and how we could segment it, and how the stuff that we've learned up to this point could fit into this format. Because realistically, yeah, everything that you would do in a kind of band showcase is what we did in our capstone. The only main difference really was that, like, we had a comedy sketch as well. I'll say that was the biggest change to the format, because in previous years it was two bands that would come on, and then it would be about, like, I'll say like a half hour, 45-minute show, just because, interview with the bands, showcasing them, bog standard, I'll say, kind of student production stuff. But with what I wanted to accomplish, I wanted to make it feel like a real show. Like, in theory, this is, unlike this podcast, which I'll say is very, very, like, solo and secular and kind of like me helming it. Like, I had people asking me, like, if I was ever going to get, like, the next second years to come on and continue this podcast. And, well, that's kind of a good idea. I just know that nobody would probably have the same kind of commitment to doing it. Like, even just doing this kind of wrap-up episode and trying to kind of conclude everything. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like people do that. Like, every year they'll try to get something going, and then it always just kind of falls through because there's a lot of work that goes into this program. You're, like, stressed out all the fucking time. But I think with what we were trying to accomplish with the format was something that we could do within the skills of, what the school has taught us. It's not extra work. It's just kind of what has been done. Because when I pitched the show, people were worried about that. They said, oh, this seems like it's going to be a lot of work. And I was just like, everything we do is going to seem like a lot of work. The short films were a lot of work. Like, I understand this is kind of like the end of the year and people maybe want to kind of slack off. That's what the practicum is for, in my complete opinion. Like, you're not getting paid for that. You're going to maybe have somewhat a portfolio when you're done with it. But, like, realistically, like, this is the last chance to kind of make something. This is the last chance to make something good, like, and having all of us contribute and put the effort to it. And also, I guess the thing with the pitch, too, was that I wanted to put the feelers out there of who would be interested really in, like, creating it. Because I get that not everybody's going to want to put in that effort and they're going to want to slack off. But I also know that once people are presented an opportunity to, like, do good, if you know what I mean, like, do good work and make something great and give them that chance to, like, make something for themselves, people will take that. And some people won't, but the people that want to take that will. Because, like, if we just done the two band performances, like, that's just so boring. Like, I don't know, I feel like having this more kind of realism to it, because there's still late night talk shows. There's still, even online, there's still, like, people, like, I'll say Adam Fryland is really trying to emulate that kind of feel of, like, a vintage late night talk show, like a David Letterman or like a Johnny Carson or something. Maybe not to the full extent, but even just filming in the 4x3 and some of the grain, or even stuff like Eric Andre, I'll say. Like, I know he's not as popular, but his show is still very much supposed to be like a late night talk show. That's still, like, a viable format. But I just love that sort of interaction and that reach out. That's why a lot of this podcast episodes too have been with guests, like, because I can only speak for so much. And like I know that it's, other people have different perspectives and different outlooks that I think are really important, and I want to showcase those and share those. And that's why too I was also interested in doing an interview segment in the capstone project. Like that would be the clearest like idea of us being like sort of this late night talk show idea, would be to have the band come in and interview them and ask questions. And I think the only actual thing that I would have changed is maybe some more audience interaction. Like we never had like a clear idea of whether we wanted to emulate a live studio audience or not, whether we wanted to be like just the crew doing it, or we wanted like a soundtrack, like not a soundtrack, but like sound effects to do it. And in the comedy sketch, if you watch it separately, because I think it's been uploaded online somewhere, it's just called Captcha. But you'll hear at the beginning and the end that there's like a laugh track, and I edited the sketch, and it was because I don't know, if you watch like a Saturday Night Live or like one of those like late night shows, it always seems like that's just kind of what they have. It was kind of fulfilling the trope, but it was also in case we did like add some sort of background noise of like an audience or something. I don't know. See if you can find it. It's called the Before You Go Show. I'd recommend it. It's good. It's good for a watch. I try to be funny in it. I don't know if I am, but I try. I try to do a good opening monologue, because that was the thing too. We did like the sort of the structure of the show was that we had this like opening segment of like me and the producer sort of like making final touches to the show, and then I'm running late. We have a little opening thing showcasing all the guests and people who are going to be in it, and then I come in from behind the curtain and I do an opening monologue, and then we do the band profile. We introduce the guys, Pistol Whip the Devil, and then we have the late night interview set where my desk is. We do the interview there with the two guys. And then we cut to a commercial that they made, because that was one of the things too we discussed last time, where a commercial was made. And yeah, I agree. I wish that was a big part too of like kind of that. I wish we had some of that freedom. I wish they weren't so negative on ideas we pitched forward, because like if you're looking, I don't know, why not do something unique? Why not do something different? I agree. Why not try to make something interesting? Why try to just do the same thing again and again, right? Like, that was the point of the show that I was pitching, was I just didn't want to do, the same thing again and again. So we went from the commercial to the first live performance of the band, and well, one half the studio, one half, it was more like a quarter, realistically, because half the studio was all the camera and equipment and whatnot, and then the other half was the actual set studio space. So 1/4 of that was like the sort of late night set, and then the other part was the stage for the band to perform on. That was really good and really well done, and just had this cool sort of platform for the drummer to sit on. These curtains coming down and this carpet that was rolled out. I really liked that red carpet. That red carpet I think added a lot to just sort of that whole aesthetic. But then we'd go from the first live band performance to a top 10 that I would do back at the late night set, because we really wanted to use that set for like something else. It was something we discussed about. Like we even had the idea of maybe doing like a live hit, like I don't know, somewhere's like someone's like outside at like BCIT, we do something on the street, but that would have been infinitely complicated. I think we could have done it, but it would have been hard. Yeah, so that's fine that we didn't do it. But we did a top 10, and I really liked that top 10. It was a good idea, I think. After the top 10, we led into the comedy sort of sketch, the Captcha. And then after that was another band performance, and then I think I do a couple closing remarks before then. We just like throw to like the end credits. And then their end credits was kind of like supposed to be inspired from like the opening of Superbad with all the sort of silhouettes and the colors. And they had me just like dancing on a green screen, and I thought we were gonna come back and do another like day of some green screen stuff, but that didn't happen, which is okay, it's fine. But no, I would have picked some better dance moves or something. I don't know. Anyways, so that was pretty much the capstone. I don't know. It's a lot of fun. If people are second year right now, I don't know, come up with some ideas if you want to do something fun. They'll probably, I mentioned it last time, but well, they definitely gave us critiques, and they definitely wanted us to do certain things kind of within their guidelines. I do agree still that like the instructors will play ball if you kind of show that you're competent enough and you have a good enough idea that you can kind of prove it can get done. And maybe that isn't true. Maybe I'm just lying again, and people are going to find out that that was false. But no, like just try, just see. They're still people, they're still humans. at the end of the day, and they just want to make good things, and they want to do as little work as like necessary, which is fine. That's fair. I do that in my job too. I don't blame them, especially with just all the stuff that goes into like all these different productions, all that drama, all the sort of, I don't know, especially the talkback and I don't know. So we did the capstone. That was kind of one part, but we also at the very end of the year did the practicums, which is just basically like industry experience. It's like a month, like 4 weeks or so. So yeah. And I worked at a local news station. Not to name names, just in case, but it was a good time to work at the news station because we in Canada had the elections coming up, so I was there for a bunch of that. And then the Pope died, so I was in sort of the news studio as it was happening, learning about that. And there was an unfortunate tragedy that happened in the area too, in a Filipino community during a Lapu-Lapu festival. And yeah, that was crazy too. Just to be, it was a good time, I guess, sort of have a practicum in the news. And the weather was really nice too, I'll say. It was very, very good weather, which is kind of weird to say after talking about a tragedy. But, gotta look at the positives every once in a while. And I spent a lot of the time with the camera guys going on shoots with them because I think I mentioned it before, but I really like cameras and I just like setting them up and putting them together. And yeah, it was fun. It was interesting. It was good to learn. And then I did a couple days in editing and just kind of seeing what it was like to edit on their software, which was really similar. I'll say that too about the program overall. That like, and I don't know, I kind of felt this at the news station that I'd kind of sort of bring something up and then they'd be like, oh, what the hell are you talking about? That's not it at all. And then they would try to explain it and I'd be like, well, no, this actually is. This is basically just what I learned at school. Like, they didn't have them. It was really interesting. We at school have something called the TriCaster, which is just like a switchboard. And if you've seen like a stereotypical newsroom with like the levers and the buttons, that's basically what it is. They all light up and do that. But in sort of a modern era, in the news station that I was working at, that was kind of an outdated concept. Now they were doing everything just based off of a keyboard. But when I was there, they still had those old sort of switchers installed, but now everything is just done kind of digitally through the computer. And while I was there, I actually tested them out because at one point, kind of the supervisors left me alone in one of the control rooms. Not one of the active control rooms, one of the control rooms where they do sort of like pre-tape recordings and that kind of stuff. It was happening, they left to go away for a second, they left me alone in there, and one of those switchboards was still installed in the room. So I went over to it, and because at school, I had experience doing it there, I knew kind of what the buttons were supposed to do and how to do all the effects. I was played with the cameras. Well, like, nothing was going on, nothing was recording or anything, but I just kind of, like, push buttons and whatnot, and then set it all back to normal. And then, like, I think with my last week that I was there, they started to rip all those old switchers out. So I got a chance to use one of them in a real control room before it was gone. And I'm happy about that. So if you go there, that news station now, it's gone, unfortunately, all that stuff. But overall, what I'll say was that I still understood a lot of the concepts of, like, how they were doing their sort of broadcast, just based on like what I learned through school through that TriCaster switchboard, the idea of auto takes and effects and MMEs and layers and just everything sort of under that kind of umbrella. But then you would say, they'd say, oh no, it's not like that at all. I'm like, well, no, actually it's really similar. And I think that's so, and people even in the program too would sometimes complain about the gear that we would have. But for me personally, it's never about the exact gear. It's about the fundamentals of what goes into operating the gear, if you know what I mean. Like, just the idea of, like, understanding sort of like a back focus and things like that. Like, it's all going to be this kind of the same, even though it's like different models and makes it cameras. And if you are going to go out in the field, like, it's not guaranteed too that you're going to have the latest and greatest stuff. People are probably using old junk that they've been using for years. It's just kind of like the way it is. So, like, to me, it was never just about learning the gear, quote unquote. So it's about learning the fundamentals. And I think in my experience in kind of the industry now, that's still kind of what I'm carrying forward with me from what I've learned in the program. And I really saw that during my practicum, was that, like, there's these concepts and ideas that we learn in school. And I think just through general work and exposure to the industry, you'll start to understand them more and more. That these are kind of like the basic ground level ideas, just so you can get your foot in the door and not be like a complete dolt and understand what somebody is saying, right? You know what I mean? And that's why, like, that's the other thing too. People, I think, will mention about the program that, oh, it doesn't go totally into film. Oh, it doesn't totally go into live events or whatever. And it's like, because they can't. Like, the program isn't necessarily designed in a way like that. It gives you a good sample platter of pretty much everything for you to kind of get an idea if this is something that you want to do going forward. To go back to the practicum, though, because just to kind of conclude some final thoughts I have about that too, but because it was interesting to go on these camera shoots and listen to these guys, and they would talk about sort of the current budgets going on, just because of, I guess, just the general change of like how people like consume content. I'll say, cable television broadcast news isn't as kind of a hot commodity as it once was. And sure, people are gonna always need their news, but like, I don't know, I've just been kind of getting my news through Instagram lately, and that's not a good thing. I need to stop doing that. But it's true, like when events unfold, it's like no longer reserved for like, 5 or 6 o'clock, on the television. It happens all the time. News is happening around us all the time. And maybe they just haven't found a way to pivot yet. Maybe they're still just trying to lock themselves into this like format. I don't know. I couldn't honestly say. I couldn't tell you 100% for sure. Because what the hell do I know? But it just doesn't feel like... It feels like if I wanted that to be my future, I have to wait for a lot of people to kind of retire. Like, I have to wait for a whole generation of people to retire. Because when I was there, too, there's a lot of older guys working as, like, camera people and editors and producers and switchers. And there's a couple of younger people, but they're still in fairly kind of, like, smaller positions, I'll say. I could easily be the target of, like, a next round of layoffs. Because that is the other thing, too. If anything, my sort of point of contact at the sort of news station got laid off, in the process of me trying to secure my practicum. Like, I guess, luckily at one point, like, I emailed them, like, right before the summer saying that I would like to work in their archives because I kind of have a fascination of that and I wanted to help, kind of continue to digitize the archive. And I'm guessing... I'm guessing the guy that also was working in the archive must have gotten laid off because we did a tour, but I didn't see him when I came back to do my practicum. But then also my sort of point of contact there, he also got laid off at one point. So my practicum was really up in the air whether I was going to do it or not. And luckily it all worked out. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all I got to say, really, to wrap it up. Because what else can I talk about? I don't know. I think we mentioned it before on the podcast. There's this thing called Dome Productions, and they do some of the broadcasting for the sports games just in the city here. And at one point there was a League of Legends tournament that was coming through and setting up in sort of the P&E area, if people are familiar with that. And originally they wanted me to come on and be like a stand-in for like some of their lighting, just to see what the lighting cues were going to look like. And that got canceled, and instead they wanted me to be like a production assistant, essentially. And I got to do that for a couple days, and it was really fun, and it was really cool, and the guys were really nice, and I liked working with them. And at the end of it, I ended up getting this sweet free chair that I'm sitting in right now that was like part of the tournament. And I think that was probably like one of the best things to kind of like happen over the summer, honestly. And it was good. It was paid work as well. Unlike the previous sort of Dome production stuff, which has always been interning, this was actual paid work, which was nice. Because a couple weeks afterwards, I ended up doing just 2 days over the weekend with Dome Productions doing the sports games there. And I met some people. They were nice guys. And some of the people I remember from the League of Legends. But yeah, that was just like interning. And so, yeah. It's always weird. It's always weird when like you kind of come on. Cause yeah, I'm just trying to prove I'm a nice guy who's like willing to help on work. But it's just, yeah, like I say, sometimes I'm just stupid, I always feel weird. I don't know. I just feel weird, especially because people are so much older too. Like not so much. Like I'm gonna be 25 soon. Like within the next month, I'm gonna be 25, which is crazy. Yeah. Anyways, but like yeah, a lot of these guys like in their 30s or 40s, whatever, and I feel so just like. I don't know. I feel so out of place, and I don't know what I'm doing because I'm not given like a direct role. And I'm not sure what's supposed to be going on, and I don't know. Like I know the etiquette, but like I also don't know like like what to do. I don't know. Yeah, I always feel like I'm just gonna mess up. Honestly, I always feel like I'm gonna break something or destroy something or ruin something. That's always my fear. Unless I have it's just like I've had experience in like doing it, which I guess isn't like crazy. That's fairly normal. But like I don't know. It comes out especially when I know I'm like doing something wrong. It's just like, oh my god, why? Like it's just like you're trying to put on like a good face and trying to show you're competent, know what you're doing. Now you're acting like a dumbass. Like what the fuck? You spent like 2 years in school. You don't know what the hell you're doing. That's why it's so weird too to like kind of then put myself out there too. I'm trying to find the work. I just feel so desperate. Like ugh. I'm just a poor boy. Please, I just need some money. Ugh. I get put in that situation where I'm no longer in this sort of same group of people that I know that I can be kind of cavalier with and I can be kind of, familiar with. It's a whole new situation where I don't know how people are going to react and how people are going to sort of talk and feel and view things. It's just that sort of uncertainty and being put into a new situation, and it really like causes me to freeze up like inside. Like I don't know. Like when people get to know me, and if you could maybe even kind of guess on the podcast, but I can be pretty bombastic and sort of big and large and loud. But really, when I get into those new social situations, I like just freeze up. I feel so awkward, and like I don't know what I'm doing, and I just feel like I'm gonna make a fool of myself. I really do. And then I don't know, something about that too that causes me to kind of like act like foolish too. Like it makes me like want to do stupid stuff. Like I don't know, man. It's weird. I don't get it. And then and then a sort of barrier comes down once I'm comfortable enough. But when you do these kind of like 1 day gigs and whatever, it's hard to kind of build up that sort of repertoire. And so it's causing me to kind of go back into like this customer service mode that I have when I do retail, where I just kind of have to sort of put on like this best face possible. Once again, maybe that isn't that crazy, but it really is just like, because the thing with customer service too is that it is kind of temporary, and you don't know like who's like gonna be your repeat customer. That if you treat them, a certain way one time, there's now a certain, like I say, repertoire that's been established between the two. I feel like in this industry, it's kind of based off vibes. If you're going to get along with someone or understand someone. I think that's why people come sort of cliquey in a way. They just only sort of hang out with like certain people sort of during the lunchtime. Like even if like I noticed this, so, like departments will usually like stay within like other departments. They usually won't like branch out to like eating lunch, even if they know people, elsewhere. It's weird. It's like a weird line that you're not supposed to cross. So it's then weird for me personally, like I say, the guy that's just kind of coming in, because I kind of experienced this during my practicum as well too. At least during the news station, they were a little bit more open to eating lunch with each other, I'll say. But like I definitely I would always feel awkward being like, oh god, I don't know, I feel like I'm in high school, I don't know where to sit at lunch, man. I don't know which table to go sit at. And sometimes in like the little cafeteria there wouldn't be that much. And luckily when I would take lunch, usually the same people that I kind of already previously knew would be at lunch, and I would talk with them. And once again, I'll say that too with the practicum. It was nice after a while, like I say, where that barrier could come down a little bit. And like I could be a little bit more familiar with some people and talk a little bit more. Yeah. Like how I would talk like on this podcast. There's a project that I've been working on sort of separately as well throughout the summer, and not just throughout the summer, but over the past like 2 years. I went to this program knowing that I wanted to do something. I wanted to accomplish something. I wanted to work on something. And that by the end of it, I was hoping that I could find other people that would want to work on this with me. Some like-minded people. Because what I wanted is to have a group that would have a sort of I keep on coming back to that word, but it really is so important to me. Just the idea of building up these like relationships and then keeping them around and establishing, I don't know, just connections and like expectations, I guess, in a way. Because yeah, it's done now. It's all said and over. But it's like, didn't you ever get that feeling like when you graduated high school? You know what I mean? Like, people make a big deal about graduating high school. And I think the reason why is because of how much time you spent with the people over 13 years, realistically. Like, if you lived in the same place and you didn't move cities or big neighborhoods, and you always went to the same school and you always saw the same people. At that point, you had seen those people at your school for more than half your life. Or about that. Because you would have started, kindergarten about 5 or 6. And when you graduate, you're about, 18, 17 or so. Because I was, 17 when I graduated. Just because I have a later birthday. But, yeah, you see those people and they become part of your life and they're part of your daily life, and then all of a sudden you don't see any of them anymore unless you see them just kind of out and around, or there's some of the high school friends that you still talk to or whatever, but you don't see the girl that you sat next to in grade 2 anymore, right? You knew her, you saw her every day, and not even to say that you had any kind of a crush on her, right? But she was just there in your life and you saw her all the time. And now she's just gone, right? That's a weird thing to feel. That sort of, conclusion, that sort of finality. And then it is kind of, up to you to keep those sort of relationships up and those connections going if you wanted to. It's up to you to kind of reach out to that second grade girl who's now not in second grade anymore. You shouldn't be, if you're about my age, you shouldn't be contacting any second grade girls unless they're your daughters. But, yeah, this school is done. Now it's over, right? And a lot of those people that you saw every day for 2 years, you're not going to see anymore. And it is weird. It's just weird that it's kind of over. And it's kind of done. And, it's kind of like this podcast. This podcast is over. This podcast is done. This is it. This is the last one. As far as I know. Unless we do something crazy. But yeah, no. This isn't gonna... Someone else isn't taking the reins, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately. I think it's better that things conclude. Things have a conclusion, This didn't go on for 100 plus episodes, and I had a deep dive done on me. Maybe in the future, but not right now. Maybe this podcast could be part of that deep dive. They could say, look, even this far back, this guy was always that crazy. I don't know. Anyways, I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode and tuning into the last episode of the Second Year Run podcast. And I hope you have a good rest of the day, wherever that might be. Second Year Run, what?